Good evening. Hi, Saman. Good evening, everybody. Let's see. I'm sorry I'm a little bit delayed. For some reason, I was having the hardest time imaginable sharing this video with our usual customers. And I have absolutely no idea why. Oh, there we go. Oh. And I have absolutely no idea why this is not working. So Saman, if you are still on, please, please, please take the time while you are here to share it. Because when I said share in a group, it would only give me one group at a time to share it with. And it was going to take me 20 minutes just to be able to share this. So anyway, good evening, everybody. For those who decided to watch and join us later, it's very lovely to see you. My name is Joanna Godwin Seidl. I am the director of Vienna Theatre Project. And look, oh, it's because my screen's dirty on my phone. That's what it is. I am the director of Vienna Theatre Project, and with my dear colleague Saman Gerard, we decided in the lockdown to read 1001 Arabian Nights. We are now on the 143rd night, and I hope that's the right night to be reading. So, everybody, thank you very, very much. Thank you very much, Saman. I don't know, but I can't go to options. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I just open it, click on groups, and it just gives me the list of groups that we belong to. And it's just ain't working tonight, people. It's one of these evenings where I am going to carry on regardless. And, oh, maybe she's right. Maybe I'll just go to options. What options? Where? I have no idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read. Just going to read. Right. Never mind. All right, sorry about that one, everybody. A few startup problems today. Right, so now, when it was the 143rd night, Shahrazad said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the man sat down by the fountain basin and ceased not pouring water on his head till he was tired. Then he went out to the room in which was the cistern of cold water, and seeing no one there, he found a quiet corner, and taking out a piece of hashish, smoked it. Presently, the fumes mounted to his brain, and he rolled over onto the marble floor. Then the hashish made him fancy that a great lord was shampooing him, and that two slaves stood at his head, one bearing a bowl, and the other washing gear, and all the requisites of the hammam. When he saw this, he said in himself, Meseemeth, these here be mistaken in me, or else they are of the company of us hashish eaters. Then he stretched out his legs, and he imagined that the bathman said to him, O my master, the time of thy going up to the palace draweth near, and it is today thy turn of service. At this he laughed and said to himself, As Allah willeth, O hashish. Then he sat and said nothing, whilst the bathman arose and took him by the hand and girt his middle with a waistcloth and black silk. After which the two slaves swallowed him from the bowls and gear, and they ceased not escorting him, till they brought him into a cabinet, wherein they set incense and perfumes a-burning. He found the place full of various kinds of fruits and sweet, scented flowers. And they sliced him a watermelon and seated him on a stool of ebony, whilst the bathman stood to wash him, and the slaves poured water on him. After which they rubbed him down well and said, "Oh, our Lord, Sir Wazir, health to thee for ever." Then they went out and shut the door on him. And in the vanity of fantasy, he arose and removed the waistcloth from his middle and laughed till he well nigh fainted. He gave not over laughing for some time, and at last quoth he to himself, "What aileth them to address me as if I were a minister and style me master and sir? Haply they are now blundering, but after an hour they will know me and say, 'This fellow is a beggar,' and take their fill of cuffing me on the neck." Presently, feeling hot, he opened the door, whereupon it seemed to him that a little white slave and a eunuch came in to him carrying a parcel. Then the slave opened it and brought out 3 kerchiefs of silk, one of which he threw over his head, a second over his shoulder, and a third he tied around his waist. Moreover, the eunuch gave him a pair of bath clogs, and he put them on, after which in came slaves and eunuchs, and supported him, and he laughing the while, to the outer hall, which he found hung and spread with magnificent furniture, such as beseemeth none but kings. And the pages hastened up to him and seated him on the divan. Then they fell to kneading him till sleep overcame him, and he dreamt that he had a girl in his arms. So he kissed her and set her between his thighs. Then, sitting her as a man sitteth to a woman, he took yard in hand and drew her toward him and weighed down upon her, when lo, he heard one saying to him, "Awake, thou ne'er-do-well, the noon hour is come, and thou art still asleep." He opened his eyes and found himself lying on the marge of the cold water tank amongst a crowd of people, all laughing at him. For his prickle was at point, and the napkin had slipped from his middle. So he knew that all this was but a confusion of dreams and an illusion of hashish, and he was vexed, and said to him who had aroused him, "Wouldst thou had waited till I had put it in?" Then said the folk, "Art thou not ashamed, O hashish eater, to be sleeping stark naked with a stiff standing tool?" And they cuffed him till his neck was red. Now he was starving, yet forsooth had he savoured the flavour of pleasure in his dream. When Kanmakan heard the bondswoman's tale, he laughed till he fell backward, and said to Bakun, "Oh, my nurse, this is indeed a rare story, and a delectable. I never heard the like of this anecdote. Say me, hast more?" "Yes," replied she. And she ceased not to tell him merry adventures and laughable absurdities, till sleep overcame him. Then she sat by his head till the most part of the night was past, when she said to herself, "It is time to profit by the occasion." So she sprang to her feet and unsheathed the hanger, and rushing up to Kanmakan, was about to cut his throat, when behold, his mother came in upon the twain. As soon as Bakun saw her, she rose in respect and advanced to meet her, and fear gat hold of her, and she fell a-trembling, as if she had the ague. When his mother looked at her, She marvelled to see her thus, and aroused her son, who woke and found her sitting at his head. Now, the cause of this coming was the Wazir Fakan overheard the conversation and the concert to kill Kanmakan, and she said to his mother, "O wife of my uncle, go to thy son, ere that wicked whore Bakan murder him." And she told her what had passed from first to last. So she fared forth at once. And she thought of naught, and stayed not for naught, till she went in to her son at the very moment when Bakun was about to slay him in his sleep. When he awoke, he said to his mother, "O my mother, indeed thou comest at a good time, for nurse Bakun hath been with me this night." Then he turned to Bakun and asked her, "By my life, knowest thou any story better than those that thou hast told me?" And she answered, "And where is what I have told thee compared with what I will tell thee? But however better it be, it must be told at another time." Then she rose to depart, hardly believing in her escape, albeit he said, "Go in peace." For she perceived by her cunning that his mother knew what had occurred. So she went away, whereupon his mother said to him, "O my son, blessed be this night, for that Almighty Allah hath delivered thee from this accursed woman." "And how so?" inquired he. "Oh, I'm so sorry, everybody. I have been rehearsing all day again today and worked extremely late last night, so I'm a little bit tired today. O my son, blessed be this night, for that Almighty Allah hath delivered thee from this accursed woman." "How so?" inquired he, and she told him the story from beginning to end. Quoth he, "O my mother, of a truth the live man findeth no slayer, the live man findeth no slayer, and though slain he shall not die. But now it were wiser that we depart from amongst these enemies, and let Allah work what he will." So, when day dawned, he left the city and joined the Wazir Dandan. And after his departure, certain things befell between King Sasan and Nuzhat al-Zaman, which compelled her also to quit the city and join herself to them. And presently they were met by the high officers of King Sasan, who inclined to their party. Then they sat in council together, devising what they should do, and at last all agreed upon a razia into the land of Rum, there to take their revenge for the death of King Omar bin al-Nu'man and his son Shah Khan. So they set out with this intent, and after sundry adventures, which it were tedious to tell us will appear from what those follows, they fell into the hands of Rumzan, king of the Greeks. Next morning, King Rumzan caused Kamkan and the Wazir Dandan and their company to be brought before him. And when they came, he seated them at his side and bade spread the tables of food. So they ate and drank and took heart of grace, after having made sure of death, when they were summoned to the king's presence, and they had said to one another, "He hath not sent for us but to slay us." And when they were comforted, the king said, "In truth, I have had a dream, which I related to the monks, and they said, 'None can expound it to thee, save the Wazir Dandan.'" Quoth the minister, "Wheel it. Was thou didst in thy dream, O king of the age?" Quoth the king, "O Wazir, I dreamt that I was in a pit, which seemed a black well where multitudes were tormenting me. And I would have risen, but when springing up, I fell on my feet and could not get out of that same pit. Then I turned and saw therein a girdle of gold, and I stretched out my hand to take it, but when I raised it from the ground, I saw that it was 2 girdles. So I girt my middle with them both, and behold, the girdles became 1 girdle. And this, O Wazir, was my dream. And what I saw when my sleep was deepest. Said Dandan, O our Lord Sultan, know that this thy dream denoteth that thou hast a brother, or a brother's son, or an uncle's son, or other near kinsman of thy flesh and blood, whom thou knowest not. Withal he is of the noblest of you all. Now, when the king heard these words, he looked at Kanmakan and Nuzhat al-Zaman and Kuzia Fakan and the Wazir Dandan and the rest of the captives and said to himself, if I smite these people's necks, their troops will lose heart for the distraction of their chiefs, and I will be able to return speedily to my realm, lest the kingship pass out of my hands. So, having determined upon this, he called the sworder and bade him strike off Kanmakan's head upon the spot, and forthright, when lo, up came Rumzan's nurse and said to him, O auspicious king, what purposest thou? Quoth he, I purpose slaughtering these prisoners who are in my power. And after that I will throw their heads amongst their men. Then will I fall upon them, I and all my army in one body, and kill all we can kill, and rout the rest. So this will be the decisive action of the war, and I shall return speedily to my kingdom, ere aught of accident befall on my subjects. When the nurse heard these words, she came up to him and said in the Frankish tongue, how canst thou prevail upon thyself to slay thine own brother's son, and thy sister, and thy sister's daughter? When he heard this language, he was wroth with exceeding wrath, and said to her, O accursed woman, didst thou not tell me that my mother was murdered, and that my father died by poison? Didst thou not give me a jewel, and say to me of a truth, this jewel was my father's? Why didst thou not tell me the truth? Replied she, all that I told thee is true, but my case and thy case are wonderful, and my history and thy history are marvelous. My name is Marjana, and thy mother's name was Abriza, and she was gifted with such beauty and loveliness and valour that proverbs were made of her, and her prowess was renowned amongst men of war. And thy father was King Omar bin al-Nu'man, Lord of Baghdad and Khorasan, without doubt or double dealing or denial. He sent his son Shah Khan on a razzia in company with this very Wazir Dandan, and they did all that men can. But Sharrkan, thy brother, who had preceded the force, separated himself from the troops and fell in with thy mother, Queen Abrizar, in her palace. We happened to have sought a place apart in order to wrestle, she and I and her other damsels. He came upon us by chance while we were in such a case, and wrestled with thy mother, who overcame him by the power of her splendid beauty and by her prowess. Then she entertained him for 5 days in her palace, till the news of this came to her father by the old woman Shawahi, surnamed Zat al-Dawahi, whereupon she embraced al-Islam at the hands of Sharrkan, and he took her and carried her by stealth to Baghdad, and with herself and Rayanana and 20 other damsels, all of us having, like her, followed the true faith. When we came into the presence of thy father, the king Omar bin al-Nu'man, and he saw thy mother, Queen Abrizar, he fell in love with her, and was going in unto her one night, had connection with her, and she conceived by him, and became with child of thee. Now, thy mother had 3 jewels, which she presented to thy father, and he gave one of them to his daughter, Nuzhat al-Zaman, another to thy brother, Zau al-Makan, and the third to thy brother, Sharrkan. This last thy mother took from Sharrkan and kept it for thee. But as the time of her delivery drew near, she yearned after her own people and disclosed to me her secret. So I went to a slave called Al-Ghazban, and privily telling him our case, bribed him to go with us. Accordingly, he took us and fled the city with us, thy mother being near her time. But as we approached a desert place on the borders of our own country, the pangs of labour came upon thy mother. Then the slave proved himself to be a lustful villain, and approaching her, sought of her a shameful thing, whereupon she cried out at him with a loud cry, and was sore affrighted at him. In the excess of her fright, she gave birth to thee at once, and at that moment there arose in the direction of our country a dust cloud, which towered and flew till it walled the view. Thereupon the slave feared for his life, so he smote Queen Abrizar with his sword, and slew her in his fury. Then, mounting his horse, he went his way. Soon after his going, the dust lifted and discovered thy grandfather, Lord of Graceland, who, seeing thy mother and sister lying slain on the plain, was sorely troubled with distress that redoubled, and questioned me of the manner of her death, and the cause of her secretly quitting her father's realm. So I told him all that had passed, first and last. And this is the cause of the feud between the people of the land of Greeks and the people of the city of Baghdad. Then we bore off thy murdered mother and buried her, and I took thee and reared thee, and hung about thy neck the jewel which was with Queen Abrizar. But where, being grown up, thou camest to man's estate, I dared not acquaint thee with the truth of the matter, lest such information stir up a war of blood revenge between you. Moreover, thy grandfather had enjoined me to secrecy, and I could not gainsay the commandment of thy mother's father, Hardub, king of the Greeks. This, then, is the cause of my concealment, and the reason why I forbore to inform thee that thy father was King Omar bin al-Nu'man. And when thou camest to the throne, I told thee what thou knowest, and I durst not reveal to thee, lest till this moment, O King of the age. So now I have discovered to thee my secret and my proof, and I have acquainted thee with all I know, and thou reckest best what is in thy mind. Now, all the captives had heard the slave woman Marjanah, nurse to King Rumzan, speaking as she spake. When Nuzhat al-Zaman, without stay or delay, cried out, saying, "This King Ruzam is my brother by my father, King Omar bin al-Nu'man, and his mother was Queen Abrizar, daughter of King Hardub, king of the Greeks. And I know this slave woman Marjanah right well." With this, trouble and perplexity got hold upon Rumzan, and he caused Nuzhat al-Zaman to be brought to him forthright. When he looked upon her, blood yearned to blood, and he questioned her of his history. So she told him the tale, and her story tallied with that of Marjanah, his nurse. Whereupon the king was assured that he was indeed and without a doubt of the people of Iraq, and that King Omar bin al-Nu'man was his father. So, without losing time, he caused his sister to be unpinioned, and Nuzhat al-Zaman came up to him and kissed his hands, whilst his eyes ran over with tears. The king wept also to see her weeping. And brotherly love possessed him, and his heart yearned to his brother's son, Sultan Makan. So he sprang to his feet, and taking the sword from the sworder's hand, whereat the captains made sure of his death, he caused them to be set close to him, and he cut their bonds with the blade, and said to his nurse Marjanah, "Explain the matter to this company, even as thou hath explained it to me." Replied she, "O king, know that this is Sheikh is the wazir, and is the best of witnesses to my of the case." And she turned to the captives and repeated the whole story to them on the spot, and the kings of the he saw on his neck the third jewel, fellow to the two which were the queen organising it. She cried so loud a cry that the palace re-echoed it. "O my son, know that now my certainty is still even more assured. For this jewel that is about the neck of yonder captive is the fellow to that I hung to thy neck. And these being the two, this captive is indeed thy brother's son, Khan Makan." Then the slave woman, Marjanah, turned to Khan Makan and said to him, "Let me see that jewel, O king of the age." So he took it from his neck and handed it to her. Then she asked Nuzhat al-Zaman of the third jewel, and she gave it to her. And when the two were in her hand, she delivered them to King Rumzan, and the truth and proof were made manifest to him, and he was assured that he was indeed Sultan Kanmakan's uncle, and that his father was King Omar bin al-Nu'man. So he arose at once on the spot, and going up to the Wazir Dandan, threw his arms around his neck. Then he embraced King Kanmakan, and the twain cried a loud cry for excess of joy. The glad news was blazed abroad without delay, and they beat the tabrets and cymbals, whilst the shawms sounded, and the people held high festival. The armies of Iraq and Syria heard the clamour of rejoicing among the Greeks, so they mounted to the last man. And King Zibil Khan also took horses, saying to himself, Would I knew what can be the cause of this clamour and rejoicing in the army of the Franks and the Greeks. Then the army of Iraq dight itself of fight and advanced into the plain and place of cut and foin. Presently, King Rumzan turned him round and saw the army deployed and in preparing for battle employed. So he asked the cause thereof and was told the state of the case. Whereupon he bade his niece and brother's daughter, Kuzia Khan, return at once and forthright to the troops of Syria and Iraq, and acquaint them with the plight that had betided, and how it was come to light that King Rumzan was uncle to Sultan Kanmakan. She set out, putting away from her sorrows and troubles, and coming to King Zibil Khan, saluted him, and told him all that had passed of the good accord, and how King Rumzan had proved to be her uncle and uncle of Kanmakan. And when she went into him, she found him tearful-eyed, in fear for the captive emirs and princes. But when he heard what had passed from first to last, the Muslim sadness was abated, and they joyed with the more gladness. Then King Zibil Khan and all his officers and his retinue took horse and followed Prince Kuzia Khan till they reached the pavilion of King Rumzan. And when entering, they found him sitting with his nephew, Sultan Kanmakan. Now, he had taken counsel with the Wazir Dandan concerning King Zibil Khan, and had agreed to commit to his charge the city of Damascus of Sham, and leave him king over it, as he before had been while they themselves entered Iraq. Accordingly, they confirmed him in the viceroyalty of Damascus of Syria, and bade him set out at once for his government. So he fared forth with his troops, and they rode with him a part of the way to bid him farewell. Then they returned to their own places, whereupon the two armies foregathered and gave orders for the march upon Iraq. But the kings said to one another, Our hearts will never be at rest, nor our wrath cease to rage, till we have taken our wreak of the old woman Shawahi, surnamed Zat al-Dawahi, and wiped away our shame and blot upon our honour. Thereupon King Rumzan and his nephew set out, surrounded by their nobles and grandees. And indeed Kanmakan rejoiced in his uncle, King Rumzan, and called down blessings on Nurse Marjanah, who had made them known to each other. They fared on, and ceased not faring, till they drew near their home, Baghdad. And when the chief chamberlain Sasan heard of their approach, he came out to meet them, and kissed the hand of the king, Rumzan, who bestowed on him a dress of honour. Then the king of Roum sat down on the throne, and seated by his side his nephew, Sultan Kanmakan, who said to him, "O my uncle, this kingdom befitteth none but thee." Replied Rumzan, "Allah be my refuge, and the Lord forbid that I should supplant thee in thy kingdom." Upon this, the Wazir Dandan counselled them to share the throne between two, ruling each one day in turn. And with this, they were well satisfied. And Scheherazade perceived the dawn of day and ceased saying her permitted say. Well, everybody, thank you very much for listening in. For those of you who listen in later, I hope, well, all of you, I hope you enjoyed it very much. I am going to love you and leave you now because I don't know whether you noticed, and I do apologise. I'm doing it right now, but I had 6 to 7 hours. I had 6 to 7 hours of rehearsals today, and then on my way home, stopped to eat, came inside, and immediately read for you guys. And before that, in the morning, I was running around, running errands for people, and so I have to admit to being exceedingly tired this evening. But as usual, it was an absolute pleasure to read for you. I wish you many, many blessings and a beautiful weekend for those who have weekends and have Saturday and Sunday off, and that is your weekend. So I wish you all many salams, many blessings, a very, very good night. If you liked this, please feel free to share it with your friends, family, colleagues, and enemies. And next week, Saman will be back on Tuesday to read you the 144th night. Good night, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye. Salam.